This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. A media rights group has added Bahrain and Belarus to its list of countries with the most restrictions on internet freedom. At the same time, the group removed Libya and Venezuela from a list of countries considered under surveillance. Reporters Without Borders released the lists in its latest Enemies of the Internet report. The group notes the importance of the Internet and social networks in the Middle East during what has been called the Arab Spring. It says social media like Facebook and Twitter have been firmly established as tools for protests and vehicles for freedom. The report identifies 12 countries as enemies of the Internet. Among them are Burma, China, Cuba, Iran, and North Korea. The list also includes Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. Bahrain and Belarus are the newest additions to the list. Reporters Without Borders says Bahrain used repressive measures to block news and information after unrest began in the Arab world last year. It says the government has used a combination of methods to suppress the opposition. These include keeping international media away from the country, arresting bloggers, and harassing human rights activists. Delphine Algond heads the Reporters Without Borders office in Washington. She says Bahrain has a very developed system for watching and blocking online communications. She says the country has increasingly used these systems after unrest started. She says Bahrain has arrested bloggers and other people for what they published on the internet. She gave the example of Zakaria Rashid Hassan, who was arrested and accused of inciting hatred. Reporters Without Borders says he was charged with disseminating false news and calling for the ouster of Bahrain's rulers. He died last April. 2 officers have been accused of beating him to death. Reporters Without Borders says other bloggers and activists have suffered repeated physical attacks and been discredited by the government. As for Belarus, Ms. Elgand says its government has increasingly blocked websites. She says the number of affected websites blocked is growing. Even some news and opposition websites were attacked. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Prisuti. This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. The Panama Canal opened almost 100 years ago. More than 1 million ships have passed through the waterway since 1914. The Panama Canal connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It reduces travel by 13,000 kilometers. It avoids the need for ships to sail around Cape Horn at the bottom of South America. More than 40 ships pass through the canal each day, more than 14,000 each year. Now, a major expansion project will permit more ships and bigger ships to pass through the canal. Jorge Luis Quiano is the Panama Canal's Executive Vice President of Engineering. He says the present canal has a total capacity of about 340 million tons a year that it can handle. That's the maximum capacity. With the expansion, we expect to double that, over 600 million tons that we can handle in a year. Ships pass through a series of locks. These locks raise a ship to the level of Gatun Lake at the canal entrance on the Atlantic side. They lower the ships back to sea level on the Pacific side. For years, shipbuilders limited the size of many ships so that they could fit through the Panama Canal. But now, many shipping companies use bigger ships to transport more goods as a way to reduce costs. Jorge Luis Quijano says the expansion project will allow many of these larger ships to use the canal. This new canal actually is offering a larger vessel that it can handle, with deeper draft, with a longer and wider vessel. Workers are building the new locks alongside the old ones, which will remain in use. The existing locks are 305 meters long and 33 meters wide. The new ones will be 427 meters long and 55 meters wide. They will be able to handle ships with drafts of more than 15 meters. Currently, ships can ride only 12 meters deep in the canal. Engineers could not make the new locks too big. Mr. Quijano says the plans had to balance the size of the locks with the cost for ships to use the canal. We had to look at the optimal size of vessel that would make the return on the investment of a high value to us. So we chose what size of vessels that could actually pay for this project. The cost is estimated at more than $5 billion. The new locks are set to open in 2014, the 100th anniversary of the Panama Canal. You can watch a video about the project at voaspecialenglish.com. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Brain imaging was once thought to be too costly and difficult for widespread use in the developing world. But the technology soon may be available in poor countries. Brain imaging creates pictures of brain activity. It uses infrared light, similar to the light produced by a television remote control. Brain imaging can identify the first signs of learning and development delays in newborns and young children. Experts know that malnutrition or a lack of healthful food can be linked to such problems. The technology has a long name, Functional Near-Infrared Spectroscopy, or FNIRS. It uses special light to provide images of the brain. Experts say FNIRS is safer than other imaging methods, and FNIRS is easy to transport. The equipment can be loaded into a vehicle and driven from village to village. Claire Elwell is a professor of medical physics at University College London. She helped develop the technology. She says the device measures oxygen in the blood to learn how babies' brains are developing. She says it can show how much information the brain is processing and where. Ms. Elwell led an FNIRS study in rural Gambia involving babies between 4 and 8 months old. They were examined 3 times over 15 months. Researchers noted the babies' reactions to different images and sounds. Then, the results were compared to those of British children. Ms. Elwell says the research provided more data on the links between malnutrition and brain development. She says the goal is to identify babies who need better diets to avoid harm to brain development. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. Since the 1970s, scientists have been searching for ways to link the brain with computers. Brain-computer interface, or BCI technology, could help people with disabilities send commands to machines. Recently, scientists demonstrated a small robotic vehicle directed by a person's thoughts. The demonstration took place at the Swiss Embassy in Washington. Jose Milan and Michele Tavella developed the system. Mr. Tavella can even talk as he watches the vehicle and guides it with his thoughts. Mr. Tavella is a researcher at the Federal Polytechnic School in Lausanne, Switzerland. In the laboratory, he can operate a wheelchair just by thinking about moving his left or right hand. Professor Milan is the team leader. He says systems like those being developed in Lausanne and other places may be available in less than 10 years. The aim is to give people with physical disabilities new ways to communicate and control devices through brain-machine interfaces. Our brain has billions of nerve cells. These send signals through the spinal cord to the muscles to give us the ability to move. But spinal cord injuries or other conditions can prevent these weak electrical signals from reaching the muscles. The researchers designed a special cap for the user. It captures the signals from the scalp and redirects them to a computer. The computer interprets the signals and commands the motorized wheelchair. The wheelchair also has 2 cameras that identify objects in its path. They help the computer react to commands from the brain. Professor Milan says scientists keep improving the computer software that identifies brain signals and turns them into simple commands. He says the practical possibilities that brain-machine interfaces offer to disabled people can be grouped in 2 categories: communication and controlling physical devices and virtual devices. One example is the wheelchair. He says his team has set 2 goals. First is testing with real patients, so as to demonstrate that this is a feasible technology they can benefit from. And the second aspect of that is to guarantee that they can use the technology over long periods of time. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can learn more about the world every day and learn English at the same time at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook and Twitter at VOA Learning English.
From
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Getting and staying connected to the internet is quickly becoming very important in Africa. A team of Americans and Kenyans have developed an internet router made especially for the continent. They say it can keep the internet available even in areas with undependable electricity and internet service. The device is called BRIC. It can plug into an electric outlet, but it can also be battery powered. Al Banda is a blogger in Cameroon. He saw the device for the first time at an information technology conference in Berlin, Germany. Mr. Banda said BRIC could solve a problem he has experienced. He says in his community in Cameroon, electricity is not dependable. Also, it is very difficult to get access to the internet, even with an internet service provider. Mr. Banda says BRIC is an African answer to an African problem. The Kenyan-based nonprofit technology company Ushahidi developed BRIC after raising money through the funding website Kickstarter. Ushahidi official Eric Hersman says the router is able to move among internet networks. He says if there is a problem with the internet connection, the device will look for a 3G network with its SIM card. He says the BRIC can be taken anywhere. Eric Hersman says the BRIC will go into production as soon as the company raises $125,000. Ushahidi has collected about half that so far. It plans to make up to 1,500 devices at first, mainly for Africa and India. Mr. Hersman expects each device to sell for about $100. The BRIC could be a solution to internet connection problems in Africa, but it could also find uses in developed countries. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. More than 3 billion people are at risk from indoor air pollution because of the heating or cooking fuels they use. Most live in Africa, India, and China. They use biomass fuels like wood, crop waste, animal waste, or coal. These solid fuels may be the least costly fuels available, but they are also a major cause of health problems and death. For more than 30 years, the Aprovecchio Research Center has been designing cleaner, low-cost cooking stoves for the developing world. Dean Still is the director of the group, which is based in the United States. He notes a World Health Organization estimate that more than 1.5 million people a year die from breathing smoke from solid fuels. Mr. Still says, and half of the people on planet Earth every day use wood or biomass for cooking. These are the people on Earth who have less money, and the richer people use oil and gas. It's been estimated that wood is running out more quickly than oil and gas. And so it is very important for the poorer people to have very efficient stoves that protect their forests and that protect their health. Every year, Aprovecchio holds a stove camp at its testing station in Cottage Grove, Oregon. Engineers, inventors, students, and others come together to design and test different methods and materials for improving stoves. Over the years, the group has made stoves using mud, bricks, sheet metal, clay, ceramics, and old oil drums. Most of the stoves look like large, deep cooking pots. They have an opening at the bottom for the fire and a place on top to put a pot. Through the years, Dean Still says his group has experimented with countless stove designs. He says the goal is to make a very inexpensive stove that costs about $5. It would make very little smoke, so it would be safe for health and reduce global warming and deforestation. Aproveccio has now partnered with a stove manufacturer in China. The company is making Aproveccio's first mass-produced stoves. They are said to use 40 to 50% less wood than an open fire and produce 50 to 75% less smoke. A company called Stove Tech is selling them through its website for less than $10. Dean Still says that more than 100,000 have been sold so far. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. Nearly 1.5 billion people, mainly in Asia and Africa, were living without electricity in 2009. That latest count from the International Energy Agency was an improvement. In Asia, 3 out of 4 people in developing countries had electricity in rural areas. So did almost everyone in cities. But in Africa, the rate was less than 70% in cities and just 1/4 of the people in rural areas. There are many efforts to find low-cost ways to light homes. One idea is a water bulb. This system has recently been used to brighten more than 100 homes in the Korokocho settlement in Nairobi, Kenya. These included the home of Medina Musin's family. Members of a youth group installed the water bulb. First, they filled a 2-liter plastic bottle with water and a little bleach. Next, they cut a hole in the metal roof. They pressed the bottle halfway into the hole. Then they used silicone caulk to seal around it to prevent rain from coming in. In no time, the home was lit with about 50 to 60 watts worth of light. The combination of water and bleach refracts light from the sun and a full moon. The bleach keeps the water clear. Medina Musin, like many of her neighbors, was spending a lot of kerosene to light her home. Now, she says she will save almost half of her weekly income. Her son Abbas can now read a book at home in the middle of the day. Veronica Wanjiru and her 2 children also have a water bulb in their home. She says her older son had to repeat a grade in school because he could not get his homework done when their home was dark. She says, "I've seen a big difference, especially with my children's education. If they're given homework, they can finish it on time. And they don't have to wait for me to come and light the candle or go outside and do their studies outside so that they can finish their homework." In the Philippines, a non-profit group called My Shelter Foundation has used a similar low-cost lighting solution in thousands of homes. The project is called A Liter of Light. The head of the group, Iak Diaz, says the idea is better than candles and kerosene and offers a great new use for old plastic soda bottles. It's safer, it's healthier, it's brighter, and the funny thing is, the light bulb actually comes from the place you'd least expect it, which is the trash bin. So it's the cheapest light bulb in the world. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can watch a video about the water bulb at voaspecialenglish.com. This is the VOA Special English Development Report. Dye can bring a little color to life. Most clothing is colored with dyes. Modern manufactured dyes can be costly. Natural dyes from plant and animal products have been used since ancient times. So this week, we describe a natural way to dye wool. The advice comes from information written by Jenny Dean of the Intermediate Technology Development Group in Britain. This anti-poverty group is now called Practical Action. There are several methods to put dye onto material. The vat method, for example, can be used to dye wool with onion skins. For this example, use 100 grams of natural wool. The wool must be clean. Leave it overnight in water and liquid soap. Then wash it with clean, warm water. Gently squeeze out the extra water. A solution called a mordant is used in the dyeing process. A mordant helps fix the dye to the material. Traditionally, mordants were found in nature. Wood ash is one example. But chemical mordants, such as alum, are popular today. Alum is sold in many stores. It is often mixed with cream of tartar, a fine powder commonly used in cooking. Mix 8 grams of alum with 7 grams of cream of tartar in a small amount of hot water. Add the solution to a metal pan of cool water. Next, add the wool and place the mixture over heat. Slowly bring the liquid to 82 degrees Celsius. Heat the mixture for 45 minutes. After it cools, remove the wool and wash it. To prepare the dye solution, cover 30 grams of onion skins with water. Use only the dry brown outer skins. Boil the liquid until the onion skins lose their color, about 45 minutes. Remove the skins after the dye cools. Now it is time to dye the wool. Place the wool into the dye and heat the mixture. Bring it to a boil, then immediately reduce the heat to 82 degrees. Now heat the dye for about 45 minutes or until the wool is the desired color. Keep in mind that wet wool looks darker than it is. Once the dye cools, remove the wool and wash it. Now the wool is orange or yellow, or at least it should be. Internet users can get the full details at practicalaction.org. Again, the address is practicalaction.org, and enter the word dye, D-Y-E, in the search box. We will post a link to the site at voaspecialenglish.com. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. This is the VOA Special English Development Report. More than 1.5 billion people around the world live without electricity. Finding better ways to bring light to the poor is the goal of researchers like David Irvin Halliday. In the late 1990s, the Canadian professor was working in Nepal when his return flight was canceled. A delay gave him time to take a 14-day hiking trip in the Himalayas. As he tells it, one day he looked in the window of a school and noticed how dark it was. This is a common problem for millions of children around the world, and not just at school, but also at home. Many families use kerosene oil lamps. There are many problems with these lamps. They produce only a small amount of light. They are dangerous to breathe, and they are a big fire danger, causing many injuries and deaths each year. Kerosene costs less than other forms of lighting, but it is still costly in poor countries. Professor Irvin Halliday says many people spend well over $100 a year on the fuel. When he returned to Canada, he began researching ways to provide safe, clean, and affordable lighting. He began experimenting with light-emitting diodes, LEDs, at his laboratory at the University of Calgary in Alberta. As a professor of renewable energy, he already knew about the technology. Light-emitting diodes are small glass lamps that use much less electricity than traditional bulbs and last much longer. Professor Irvin Halliday used a 1-watt bright white LED made in Japan. He found it on the internet and connected it to a bicycle-powered generator. He remembers thinking it was so bright a child could read by the light of a single diode. In 2000, after much research and many experiments, he returned to Nepal to put the systems into homes. His Light Up the World Foundation has now equipped the homes of 25,000 people in 51 countries. He says the one-time cost of the system is less than $100. So 1 year of kerosene would pay for a solid-state lighting system. Now, his aim is to develop a lower-cost lighting system. In January, David Irvin Halliday left the University of Calgary. He has also decided to give up leadership in the Light Up the World Foundation to start a company in India. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report in Special English. Every year, IBM chooses 5 new technologies that the company believes will change the world within the next 5 years. The list is called 5 in 5. IBM says it considers its own research and the new directions of society and business when identifying the technologies. This year, the list describes devices that will extend our 5 senses. Imagine looking for clothes online and touching your computer or smartphone to feel the cloth. IBM's Vice President of Innovation, Bernie Meyerson, says this technology could be available in the next 5 years. Touch is just one of the senses that technology will help to extend. IBM says smart machines will soon be able to listen to the environment and give us information about the sounds they hear. For example, Bernie Meyerson says an advanced speech recognition system will tell new parents why their baby is crying. Smart machines will also help identify medical conditions. If you sneeze on your computer or cell phone, the device will study the molecules that came out of your mouth. It will then tell you whether you need to see a doctor. Another prediction is that computers will be better able to not just look at images, but understand what they show and act on that information. Bernie Meyerson says IBM scientists are also developing a computer system that can examine and combine molecules to create the most popular flavors and smells. Mark Maloof is a computer scientist at Georgetown University. He says it will be exciting to see what young people will do with the mobile technology, networking, and computing power of tomorrow. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.